Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you're having a good week and enjoying the collapse. I have to confess today that I really don't know what to cover in this episode. There's so much nonsense going on, and the endarkenment is accelerating so quickly that I'm kind of put aback by where we are. And I had a hard time deciding what to do the show about today, but I settled on something that I think is probably the most alarming thing that is going on right now, that is kind of gaining momentum and becoming more of a thing, and that is food security. Now, I use that term because it's one of the 7 things that I consider essential for survival. And that's not that survival at like the individual kind of personal level, like you might find, like a bushcraft video type survival. This is more of the homestead survival kind of thing. And I don't say independence or access or something like that. I use the term security because I recognize that achieving complete and total independence in these areas is really kind of nearly impossible. Just the way society is structured and the way everything is today, it's just almost impossible to get complete and total independence in all of these areas. In some areas you can, in others it's just not possible. So I use the term security, but I believe that it encapsulates the state of having controlled access to something, a controlled source or controlled access. You own it, you control it. At least maybe you've got some kind of trade or something like that negotiated, but it's something that you have control over that outside influence can't change or can't stop. So the areas that I look at as essential are food, water, sanitation, medical, energy, physical defense, and communication. So I've spoken about this before, so it's not ground we really need to go into again, but I want to mention something before we go into the food situation. It's this list that I use to determine if something is good for me or my family or not. And what I mean by that is, if a company proposes something like some new product or some new service, or they're going to do something, whatever. Does it improve my situation in these areas, or does it harm it? And more importantly, if the government does anything, law, regulation, whatever the government's doing, does it improve or harm me in these areas? If it harms me, then I'm against it and I will resist it, just period, bottom line. And if a company or the government is doing something that impacts negatively on these areas for you, you should be opposed to it, just period. So anyway, and that brings us to the food situation that is building all over the world. Folks, these people intend to starve us into submission. They are accelerating their plans to do this, and I think they may be tipping their hand to the timing of this thing. We're seeing the early impacts of their effort to attack food production already. And I believe that this winter we're going to see this come to the attention of everyone. I think people are going to wake up and recognize the fact that, something is going on, something is happening. They're already laying the groundwork to blame this on climate change because the Putin invasion has fallen on deaf ears as an excuse. That's not holding water. It's not floating for the normies out there. But the elites are seeking every avenue available to them to actively reduce the amount of land that is utilized for food production. They're attacking every aspect of food production, mass food production. They're cutting down, fertilizers and all of these kind of things, attacking the use of fertilizers in the name of carbon emissions or some BS like that. But they're dressing this up in the language of it's a climate emergency measure that has to be taken. But make no mistake, this is an attack on food security, and they intend to induce a famine. They want us starving. And the goal is twofold here. They want to starve people into compliance. Just, we control the food production and food distribution, and if you don't do what we say, we'll take that away from you. Or just, the fewer people there are, the easier it is to rule us. If you're starved to death, you're not their problem anymore. And the other aspect is they just want to force people into these mass collective urban sprawls, because the closer and tighter we are forced to live, the easier it will be to control us. And this is what they mean when they say you will own nothing. They're trying to force us together into these big hive cities, because we'll have to move there in order to get this food that they control. This food distribution is going to be very short line. But right now most Americans own either a car or a home, and when many owning both, obviously, and if not multiple cars. And these are the property that we seek to protect and nurture. We want to grow that. We are invested in them, and we're tied to them. And that means we have a vast interest in protecting them. And by extension of those things, all of the other trappings that are associated with, your home and your automobile, all of those things, it's a critical aspect of our social and communal life. And the elites want to eliminate that. They want none of us to own homes or cars, because they want us to have no loyalty to any one thing. Okay, no attachments to a community, nothing to defend and protect. They want us to be just listless human tumbleweeds, because what they believe is that in that scenario, our entire sense of loyalty and devotion will be shifted to them, okay, or the state. They will be seen as the saviors and the providers of everything that we have, and if we do anything that they don't wish, anything that upsets that or rocks the boat, they'll strip it away from us with no thought about it at all. And in fact, what you might see is situations like mass punishment for the actions of one or two people. If anyone resists something, the whole city block goes without power for a week. These kind of things. That is how they seek to control us. And we will police ourselves, because we will not want to endure that collective punishment. Everybody thinks that this is about money. Everybody thinks like, BlackRock buying these homes and all these kind of things, taking over all this property. Oh, it's about them pocketing. It's not about pocketing at all. If you look at the coming collapse of the housing market, BlackRock is going to lose its shorts. They're going to lose a ton of money because they drove the prices up on these homes. They paid inflated prices for them to get them. And so that excuse doesn't make any sense. This is just about removing our ability to own property, is what it all boils down to. So part of the agenda is to strip ownership of land from everyone, because people who own land can provide for themselves, and they are less subject to those external control measures. People who own their own land can grow their own food and store their own water and produce their own electricity and all these things. They can have all of this because they own the means of production, as the commies would say. We're seeing this play out already, and it's going to increase and increase. It's just going to get worse and become more magnified. We've seen multiple reports surrounding the Dutch farm protests, that this is rooted in the Dutch government seeking to forcefully restrict the use of land for farming. They are trying to get the farmers to sell their land and stop farming altogether. They're going to run these people out of business. And then at that point, they'll say, well, if I can't farm, if I can't use this fertilizer, I can't produce the same amount of crop on the farmland that I have no need to have all this property. So they'll sell all of the land and take it out of crop rotation. It will no longer be used to produce food. They're doing the same thing in the UK. So this, this tack that they are taking in the EU, it's a little different in the United States. What we're seeing is just the pressure from inflation is driving the small independent farmers out of business. They can't compete with these big corporate farm agribusiness. The big consortiums have the means to weather some of these price increases. And what's happening is these consortiums are pushing out the small farmers. They come in and they buy the land, and then they make a deal to allow the farmer to stay on the property. Oh, we'll buy the land, you stay here and work the land, you sell the crops to us, we're the sole purchaser of your product. But when you pass away, you can't leave that farm to your family. That has to go to some other farmer that they pick to do the work. So it stops that inheritance and that family business aspect, which is another thing that the elites are after. They want to be the sole ones that inherit property going forward. Now, this should be causing alarm bells to be ringing in everybody's ears by now, but it's not. And some of that is media, and some of it is just people just wanting to ignore it. They see the higher prices in the grocery store. Last night, my wife and I went grocery shopping, and she made that comment of this is the place that everybody sees the effects of this inflation and this recession and all of these economic woes that we're seeing, and that's totally true. But they're not willing to take that next logical leap and try to figure out, well, what's really the cause of this? Is this some accident? Is this Biden's policies or whatever? If they want to keep it kind of high level political, they don't want to drill down and see. They just want to ignore the fact that this is deliberate. It's being done to us on purpose. You will have no means of food production or obtaining food unless they approve it. They will control all food production, and that means that you will eat what they sell you. And they want you to eat heavily processed and refined plant and bug protein. Now, and this is one of the things that I really have not figured out, because there's no advantage to making this the norm, okay? It's not some, symbolic occult thing, or it doesn't have any strange occult significance or anything like that. That's not the source of it. I don't think it's, just some political scrap that they're tossing to the vegans because, no one really gives two shits what the vegans think, okay? They don't represent a significant political voice. They're just fellow travelers for the socialists and the commies. So I can't really figure it out other than to say that it's just down to a humiliation ritual. It's a means to ensure that they have a built-in rewards program when they finally achieve their utopia. Because rest assured, they have no intention of eating plant and bug protein. No, that is for us poors, okay? They will be dining on what we now think of as real food, and that will be a luxury, and they will dole that out as a reward for midwit functionaries and anyone who is snitching on and turning in their fellow citizens. It'll be, you get a real can of Hormel chili that's real beef and not bug beef or whatever, roach meat or whatever they're planning on selling us. I think, to me, this is the aspect of this that alarms me the most, and it's the one that I'm kind of using as a gauge to measure just how screwed we are and how close we are to their final phase, how quickly they are ramping up the selling of this and the normalization of eating bugs. We're going to start seeing more, commercials, more public service announcements, more ad council, blah, 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 all of these things, we're going to start seeing more of this come out of trying to encourage people to try alternative protein sources. Yeah. This should be the thing that opens the eyes of the blind and pushes them over the edge. And when we have government officials telling us that farming and ranching are so destructive to the climate that we can no longer do them and we have to start eating bugs, but all the while the massive corporate agribusinesses aren't changing their tune. They're not changing anything about what they're doing. That should be the warning. That should be the tipping point that brings out the pitchforks and the torches, and it makes Western populations go full Sri Lanka. I think the reason it's not yet done is that people are still refusing to believe that they're serious. Like I said, they just don't want to recognize what is being done to them. They still think that it's just random whack jobs like these people who are now trying to normalize cannibalism. We've seen articles in mainstream news media talking about, is cannibalism something that we should consider? No, it's not. They truly want Soylent Green to be a reality. They want to process people into food along with these bugs and plant protein. And this is a hellscape, okay? This is a hell on earth that they envision, and it was something that existed only in the most dystopian science fiction for decades, but it's now being normalized and sold to the masses as the only means for humanity to survive because it's got hot in the summertime. Now, I'm not a believer in climate change. I guess that's because I grew up in the South where it was hot as shit every summer, and that was just something we dealt with. It's not that I don't think climate changes. It most assuredly does. It's just that human activity has very little influence on that. Beyond some local effects, we no more influence the climate than we influence the sun burning, or coming up every morning. It's just a fantasy. But anyway, I'm not a believer in this hysteria, and that's what I think all of that is. It's just hysteria brought on by the global elite that want control and dominance over our existence, and they don't believe it either. That's one thing to be assured of is they don't believe it either, and you can tell because they don't practice what they preach. They whisk around the world in private jets and massive SUVs, and they eat whatever they want whenever they want, and they have no intention of changing their ways either. Well, I'll believe you, Al Gore, when you ride a bike to Davos. Until then, shut the hell up. Now, you guys know these things, but the normies out there are just figuring it out, and they're just putting the pieces together. But this is accelerating now, and I think that we are in a race. We're in a race to see, can we awaken enough people to see this before the elites put the final wall around us. And we have to get the masses to see this, because even though I don't think we need to have them all fighting, we don't need everybody to stop this, but we do need them to get out of the way and let us do what needs to be done. It's a short show this week, guys. That's all I got time for. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.